the coach is indoctrinating them, or are they not beholden to the rules? Nobody's indoctrinating them, you fucking moron! Besides their dumbass conservative parents. All right, let's talk about it. Parents' rights. It's become a buzzword of sorts, a buzz term, if you will, for conservatives everywhere. The party of family values, if you will. And you can see that's well demonstrated here by the Biden flag in the back, the families with all their middle fingers up, and women with their ass cheeks prominently on display. Now, I'm not against some sweet booty, but I feel like this is a little bit off here. You know, we have some very clashing visualizations going on here. What about parents' wrongs? That's a great question. Let's talk about parents wrong, shall we? Yes, this is the party of family values, everybody. The fuck Biden flag in the back, the booty cheeks hanging out, and all the kids having their middle fingers up. This is what they want. And this is the same party, by the way, that loves to call the leftists groomers. All right, we are the ones that are corrupting kids. We're the ones that are destroying kids, right? That's really cool and fun and normal. Let's keep going, shall we? This just happened today, I believe. 192 Republicans voted against $28 million for baby formula shortage. Now, isn't that interesting? So let's take a look. On passage, we got Democratic representatives, all of them pretty much unanimously voted to pass this legislation to help give babies formula. Babies, okay? To fund formula for literal babies. You know, the things that they love to tout that they care about, and that's why they're against abortion? Yeah, those guys, those things. 12 Republicans said yay, and 192 said nay. Is this your party of family values? Because it's pretty fucking pathetic. You know, you want to talk about parents' rights. I think parents have a right to food for their fucking babies. And we'll go over that later. There are a few organizations that I found, a couple at least. There's one called parentalrights.org. And the first video on their front page was very interesting to me. I watched the first 6 seconds and immediately I was drawn in. I was like, this is such good content. We have to milk this. So let's take a look at what's going on here on parentalrights.org.
There's one thing we can all agree on. When it comes to raising children, family is better than the government.
Okay, so right off the bat, I've got a note. I feel like we can talk about the government's responsibility in helping us with raising our children without calling them inherently bad, right? I don't think we all agree that parents are 100% of the time better than the government. I don't think that's correct.
Sadly, in 1927, the Supreme Court denied parental rights to parents with disabilities, a precedent continuing to this day. African American parents also see their parental
I don't know which legislation they're referring to there. I literally did not watch past the first 6 seconds.
rights taken away at an unequal rate compared to other parents.
Percent of U.S. population who are African American equals 12.8%. Percent of children in foster care who are African American. Yeah, because black people are disproportionately targeted by the justice system and they're disenfranchised. So of course that's the case. If you want to fix parental rights in this statistic alone, you would advocate for better policies for black people and for disenfranchised communities, for poor communities. But they won't do that because this is not about helping these people.
The U.S. Accountability Office has attributed this in part to racial bias. In 2000, the Supreme Court's decision in Troxel took away the protection parental rights used to have as a fundamental right. As a result, parents of all backgrounds are seeing their rights slowly slipping away. Imagine your child being taken away from you simply because
Okay, so notice they're saying imagine your child being taken away from you simply because you wanted a second opinion.
you wanted a second opinion on a medical procedure.
On a medical procedure. So, this could be referring to a number of things. The big one right now is trans procedures, right? Parents wanting a second opinion on trans procedures. I think wanting a second opinion is fine. But if the majority of healthcare professionals are saying, yes, your child is trans, yes, your child needs to be affirmed, they need to go by such and such pronouns, that's what we've discussed with your child, this is who they are. And when they turn 10, 11, 12 years old, we might need to put them on hormone blockers and we can discuss it then. That's a thing that you should abide by because they're medical professionals and they studied this shit and they're going off of the science. And if you don't, you are quite literally going against medical science. And you could see that result in the permanent deletion of your child. I imagine most people don't want that, but sometimes I have to wonder.
Or being told you cannot view library information for your children, including the titles of books that are accumulating late fees. Or being refused access to your 13-year-old's grades without your child's consent.
Wait, where's that happening? I've never heard of that one. Does anybody have a source for that one? What are they referring to there? Do they have sources? This is on YouTube. Of course they don't. Why would they?
These are real situations happening to real people. Whether Republican,
Prove
Democrat,
it!
or Independent. It's
Show me
time
where
to
this is
unite
happening.
to act-
Where? Tell me where. Parents are not allowed to look at the grades of their 13-year-old. Tell me where that is happening. There's no way. You can't. You cannot show me that.
Act to protect children by preserving parental rights. It's an issue that matters.
College grades can be shielded by not high school. Well, that makes sense. They're fucking adults. They're super real, you guys. I promise. I didn't make it up. I promise.
By preserving parental rights. It's an issue that matters to us all. Sign up to learn more at
Oh my god. Of course they did the fucking bipartisanship. The way that they worded the assessment is very important. Do you support parents' rights in education? Of course the vast majority of people are going to say yes. And to an extent, I think that parents have a right in their kids' education. To an extent. But not to the extent that these motherfuckers think that they do. Everyone's saying it, believe me, believe me. So yeah, this is, again, parentalrights.org. I decided to look at their news section, right? If you go to the front page, you can go to news, and then you can click on an article. So this is one about Georgia and how they're setting an example for the whole nation. On April 28, Georgia's Governor Brian Kemp signed into law House Bill 1178, the Parents' Bill of Rights. It's a big deal in addition to providing Georgia parents with strong legal protections to ensure they're able to know, 1, what children are learning in public schools, and 2, be involved in their children's education. The Georgia Parents' Bill of Rights boldly adds the following into Georgia state law. No state or local government entity, governing body, or any officer, employee, or agent thereof may infringe upon the fundamental right of a parent to direct the upbringing and education of his or her minor child without demonstrating that such action is reasonable and necessary to achieve a compelling state interest and that such action is narrowly tailored and is not otherwise served by less restrictive means. This is super vague language, okay? They can do almost anything they want with this. They can tell the school that they prefer to teach their child creationism over evolution, right? And of course, many fucked up parents are already doing that. That is quite literally barring your child access to their right to education. And some might consider that abuse. You can use that to mean kids aren't allowed to learn that black people were enslaved once, right? We also see that happening. They want kids who are obedient to conservative parents. Of course they do. That's all they want. And we'll go over the fun textbook shit in a minute. Georgia is now the 15th state in the nation to protect parental rights as a fundamental right in the state code. Let's scroll down a little bit. Here we go. The language ensures that any governmental action that could infringe upon the fundamental right of a parent to direct the upbringing and education of his or her child will face strict scrutiny. It's a very high bar for the government. An example of government action that would meet this high legal bar is law enforcement's removal of a child from a home for physical abuse by a caregiver. It's a major legislative win for parents who have been ignored by the education establishment. Ever since the COVID-19 pandemic shut down public schools in the spring of 2020 and pulled back the curtain on what children were learning or not learning, we have seen deepening frustration from parents across the nation. And as parents were ignored by the education system, this frustration built. It helped to propel Governor Glenn Youngkin to victory in Virginia in November 2021. It led to the ouster of 3 school board members in deep blue San Francisco earlier this year, but legislative wins have been elusive. This started to change when Florida, where parentalrights.org already helped pass a law in 2021 enshrining the fundamental rights of a parent to direct the upbringing, education, healthcare, and mental health of his or her minor child, built on that success this year by passing HB 1557, Parental Rights in Education, aka the Don't Say Gay bill, if you weren't aware. But even though this was a major win for Florida parents, Florida seemed to be an outlier in heeding the cries by parents who had been ignored by the education establishment. Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers had recently vetoed a bill in Wisconsin that would have also enshrined parental rights as a fundamental right. The South Dakota Senate Judiciary Committee killed the fundamental parental rights bill, even though the bill had earlier passed the South Dakota House of Representatives by a bipartisan vote of 63-5. Thank fucking God. A fundamental parental rights bill was killed by a Colorado House committee. Other bills championed by parents were stalled or weakened across the nation. Good. Yeah, and then they go on to give you statistics that, of course, are totally cool and real and valid. Even if the statistics are real, that they say that like, oh, well, you know, the vast majority of parents support parental rights. You ask them this one question on the survey, do you support parents' rights in schools? And then they say the big yes. It's like, yeah, of course they do, because of the way you word it. But you can't say like, for instance, I support safety measures for my kids in school, and then take that to mean, well, that's why we're locking your child in a secure case during their period in English class, because otherwise they might get up and use the bathroom and get shot on the way. Like, you can't take it to that extreme. It's ridiculous. People are frustrated their concerns relating to their own children's education is being ignored. I mean, I just don't give a shit, dude. So this is a page explaining who they are. Who we are. We're concerned parents and citizens who care about children and are concerned by how parental rights are slipping away. Children need to be raised and represented by parents who love them, not by disconnected government officials. When it comes to raising children, parents are better than the government. And I take issue with that because that's pitting parents against the government, and we don't need to do that. The government is here to help parents, not be diametrically opposed to them, okay? This is another one I wanted to go over real quick. Just another parents' rights in education, which, you know, it was started by Susan Gallagher, and I don't really know much about her. So all I could really find on her is that she ran for office in 2012 and lost. And I guess since then she's been doing this propaganda against, you know, LGBTQ stuff in school. So you can see this is her front page. And right off the bat, we've got a Glenn Beck video. So that's cool. Project Groomer, exposing the secret plan to something something. Here, let's just click it. It's a 48-minute video. We're not going to watch all of it, but I just want to see a little taste of it. Let's take a look. Ah, yes, Glenn Beck. Glenn Beck, the guy who was fired from Fox News for being too far right. Remember that.
Warning. The following program contains material that may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Oh boy.
Right now, the world is hyper-focused on Putin's invasion of Ukraine. But America, it's time to put that war aside. Because before we can help the world, we must win the war happening right now on our own soil. It's a war against our kids.
I'm going to give you my explanation about what it means to be transgender as well. So when babies are born, the doctor looks at them and they make a guess about whether the baby is a boy or a girl. But sometimes the doctor is wrong. The doctor makes an incorrect guess. Like
Wait, stop. That was fine. That was fine. What was wrong with that?
Our leadership over there has been so welcoming to my not at all secret gay agenda.
Hi, I'm a queer teacher. Kids as young as 3 and 4 are actually aware of their gender identity, even if they don't have the language for it.
Yes.
This is
yes, that's all true, all of it.
What we've ever seen. Because
far
this
beyond
is a sinister one, created by some of the most powerful people in the world.
Because we've always had kind of a private notion of children. We haven't had a very collective notion of these are our children.
To systematically brainwash our prized possessions, our kids.
Our prized possessions? What? I swear to God, I did not pre-watch this. I didn't even plan on showing you guys this video. That says so much more than I could ever say. They say it. I was going to say this at the end. This was going to be one of my closing statements, that they see kids as something to be owned, as a piece of fucking property. They said it for me. That's amazing.
Who could become far left
Save me
foot
some word.
soldiers if we don't take a stand right now.
Wow.
Nobody should be talking to anybody's child about sexuality except their parents.
Tonight, I will show you the grotesque lessons being forced onto our kids' brains, the effect that it's having on them, and who is behind it all. Tonight.
George Soros, that's who. Anyway, yeah, so that's on the front page here. Gay couples supported limited flag policy in K-12 classes. What? Limited flag policy, what is that?
Hi, I'm Suzanne Gallagher, and I'm the Executive Director of Parents' Rights in Education. And today, I want to introduce you to 2 men, a same-sex couple, who have been together for over 34 years.
Okay.
One of them is a retired Oregon elementary school teacher who taught in the same school for over 30 years. And the other one worked in and around Yamhill County for over 30 years. And both of them have lived in Yamhill County for over 26 years. So they are Yamhill County residents. And
Get
sadly,
to the point, come on.
They must remain anonymous at this time, as they fear retribution from those with opposing views. So whatever they say tonight will be very eye-opening in relation to the attempt to recall 2 members of the Newburgh School Board, also in Yamhill County. So I'd like to introduce you to these 2 gentlemen.
Yeah, look at these gays, they agree
that there
with
should
us.
be no flags permitted in the schools, with the exception of the American and state flags. So what do political...
Why are those the exceptions?
They would cause divisiveness, and they separate kids from each other. It causes more of a wedge in groups, or identifies groups to be more singled out. Instead of being inclusive, it's exclusive.
It's exclusive.
You cannot convince me that they aren't legitimately just making this up. They just pulled 2 dudes off the street and said, you're a gay couple, here's what you say. I'm convinced. Even if it is real, I don't give a fuck, okay? Gay people can be just as stupid and right-wing as straight people. All right, just look at David, what's his face? Dave Rubin, crisis actors. Yeah, Crisis actors. Yeah, there are conservative LGBT people. There's conservative trans people. Just look at fucking, what's her face? Blair White, thank you. You guys get the idea. So that's the kind of shit that we're looking at right here. And of course, we have parents in the possessive form have legal rights. So that's cool. Very well moderated website here. Let's look at some of their issues that they go over. Comprehensive sexuality education. Parents' rights in education is concerned about the disproportionate focus on sexual relations in public schools beginning in kindergarten. Designed to change traditional sexual and gender norms of society, controversial behaviors are taught to minors, including details of anal and oral sex, mutual masturbation, and gender options. Who is teaching kindergarteners about anal and oral sex? Excuse you. The most that we ever teach kindergarteners about that shit is if a parent or an adult tries to do this to you, it's wrong and bad and you need to seek help. That's the extent to which we need to teach them that. Sometimes adults try to touch you in ways that you won't like, that are not comfortable, like this and this and that. Sometimes they touch you in your no-no area. That's when you go to an adult. That curbs sexual abuse. Even in light of no negative physical and emotional health outcomes for sexually active children and age of consent laws, minors are told they have a right to have sex early and often, that, quote, engaging in sexual behaviors should feel pleasurable. But they should. So when you're teaching 13 and 14-year-olds, which you should be, about sex, by that age you should be teaching them, okay? I will die on that hill. When you're teaching 13 and 14-year-olds about sex, you should tell them engaging in sexual behaviors should feel pleasurable. They should. It's about being taught abstinence. I mean, that's what this is all about. And of course, they have a Fox News segment.
While teaching 10-year-olds the, quote, pleasures of sex.
Yes, sex ed for kids as young as 10. I am 100% on board with it. At 10 years old, they're about to go into puberty. They're going to start experiencing sexual changes to their bodies. They need to know that shit. Do you want them to just go into puberty in the dark? The first time I jerked off was at 12 years old and I had no fucking clue what was happening. Like, this shit is real.
Folks at the International Planned Parenthood Federation apparently think that is a great idea. That group making the recommendation that's what we should teach our 10-year-olds. In a new report...
Okay, I'm not watching this. You guys get the idea. These people are freaks. Let's look at another issue, shall we? Let's see. Comprehensive sexual education, school health clinics. What is this one? Hold on. I'm not going to go through all of these, but this one stuck out. When did schools become social service agencies? When they decided to bring health clinics to campus. The state says no to alcohol, tattoos, and tanning beds, but yes to hormone therapy, contraception, and sex change. This isn't happening at schools. It's not happening at schools. Yes, let's go to the sex change room over in the nurse's office. This is ridiculous. Yeah, the reason Hitler's in the recommended is because I have a video up on it. Okay, don't worry about it. It will be explained. That's unbelievably ridiculous. Let's keep going. Alternative lifestyles and bullying. Geez, I don't want to go through all of them, but I kind of have to, I feel like. Gay couples supported limited flag policy, blah, blah, blah. Is it in an effort to help others, have we gone too far? Parents' rights in education defends all students. They should be required to respect one another, and bullying of any kind toward anyone shall not be tolerated. PRIE takes a stance for tolerance, inclusivity, and equality for all students in the public schools. Our concern stems from many complaints from students, parents, and teachers of inequities in these areas. Unfortunately, the extreme focus on LGBTQ initiatives has created an unintended backlash as some students feel marginalized and threatened for holding their traditional viewpoint. I got news for you. If your traditional religious viewpoint is that being gay is wrong, yes, you should feel disenfranchised for that. You should be made to feel shame for that, okay? And also, that's just not happening. They're literally handing out Bibles in schools, and it's totally fine and cool and normal. Young people are growing less tolerant of LGBTQ individuals, a jarring turn for a generation. Traditionally, oh God, they're going to turn the narrative back on us. This is all just virtue signaling. That's not true. Alternative lifestyles and bullying, National Education Association, anti-American education, social emotional learning. Now, this one stuck out to me as well. A descendant of the self-esteem movement, the last educational fad is social emotional learning. The term sold to public schools is the whole child, including character and ethics education, incorporating psychological insights and group dynamics. What's wrong with that? Mary Hayson and Teresa Farnan, authors of Get Out Now, list 5 red flag non-academic factors. Substantive content of SEL programs and resources intrudes on personal and family privacy, making children vulnerable to psychological manipulation. I don't even know what that means. Teachers conduct assessments of children's emotional and social development, a task for which they are not trained, qualified, using assessment tools unsupported by underlying research. I refuse to believe this one. I refuse to believe this one flatly. They have no source. They have zero sources. Zero. It's all just I said said it, so therefore it's true. SEL assessments are included in children's permanent school records with uncertain privacy safeguards. I don't know about that one. SEL's curricular resources and assessments may touch on private or sensitive matters without parental notice or consent. This is a big one for them, okay? And we'll get to why. Mission creep diverts resources, time, and attention away from education and encourages schools to usurp parental and familial responsibility towards the emotional development of children. This one is saying like they're veering away from education in favor of like catering toward the emotional development of children. But like, how do you even separate those two? How do you even separate those two? You have to teach children emotional development and cater to that in order for them to be engaged in education. You have to. It could all be resolved with permission slips? No. So yeah, we watched that. We didn't even get to drag queen ed, safety and privacy, obscenity in schools, viewpoint discrimination. This one should be a good one. Students are discriminated against because of their political beliefs. Addison Barnes filed suit against Hillsborough High School in defense of his free speech rights. He wore his border wall t-shirt to school and was asked to leave if he did not take it off or cover it up. If people are offended by his shirt, that's their right to be offended, Barnes attorney Mike McLean said, but it's also his right to have his opinion as well. The constitutional line isn't who's offended. Is there a specific and clear disturbance being created by the expression of students' political speech? I don't have a solid opinion on the build the border wall t-shirt thing. I really don't. I don't give a fuck. If they're going to be school districts saying to take it off, I don't care. Teachers are supposed to figure out how a child learns and where they are on a grade level knowledge. Yes, that's one of their jobs, yes. Schools have dress codes. I mean, they all do, yeah. Yeah, I guess they all do, don't they? Like, not uniforms, but dress codes. You're anti-free speech? That's right, brother. The majority of Americans agree with a certain amount of sexual education for kindergartners. This is your private place. If an adult touches it without permission, you should tell somebody. Not everybody. Not everybody. There are conservatives who very much disagree that you should teach children when they're being abused by adults. There are many conservatives saying this. If it was a liberal wearing BLM, you would defend it? Yeah, probably. So yeah, that's this website for you, okay? By the way, that was the only example they could give here. Look at this. That's the entire segment. That one example. That's amazing. Okay, incredible. T-shirts with words are normally a bad idea at school. It's a case by case basis. Okay, I'm not that concerned about it. We're talking about broadly the parental rights movement. All right, so we went over who Susan Gallagher is. Very cool woman. Not really. So let's look at actual rights that parents have in public schools. This is from greatschools.org. These rights are written out in the Constitution and the 1964 Civil Rights Act, the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, the No Child Left Behind, numerous other landmark policies. So this is a pretty well supported document right here. The right to a free education is one. Immigrants' child right to a free education. The right to not be discriminated against. So let's take a look at this one. If your student is gay, they have a right to take a same-sex date to the prom. This is admitted a battle in many areas. If they have a disability like deafness, they have the right to have this accommodated with a sign language interpreter, blah, 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 blah. If you have a transgender child, the issue gets more complicated with recent U.S. Department of Education developments, which states they might have the right to use a bathroom that corresponds to their gender identity depending on their state or municipality. The right to use a bathroom that corresponds to their gender identity exists in 19 states, plus D.C., and more than 200 municipalities. Here's a guidance on this contentious issue from the ACLU. And we're not going to go over that, but you know, that is a right that children enjoy, to not be discriminated against, okay? Now they lump this in with parental rights, but you know, a normal parent would recognize that they're one and the same. Right to learn English and other language rights. Right to be safe in school. I mean, that's an obvious one. Right to freedom of speech and religion. The U.S. public school system is secular, non-religious, and state laws forbid public education funds to be spent on religion. However, freedom of speech and religion are protected by the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. If it isn't distracting to other students, your children have the right to pray when they are at school, the right to take religious books to school, the right to wear clothes signifying their religious beliefs, the right to talk about their faith at school, the right to organize a religious club, the right to refer to their religious beliefs in student assignments, and the right to miss school in observance of religious holidays. Conversely, it's illegal for a public school to proselytize or impose religious beliefs on your child to promote one religion as superior to another, or religion in general as superior to secular beliefs. Discussion of world religions must be neutral. School prayer led by teachers or coaches is illegal. There can be no, which by the way, they still fucking do. There can be no display of religious doctrines like the Ten Commandments, and secular children don't have to say under God when the class recites the Pledge of Allegiance. They shouldn't have to say the Pledge of Allegiance at all, but whatever. If a school promotes it as a means of religion, parents can complain to the school, blah, blah, blah. So you get the point. They have religious freedom. I think that this needs to be honed in on a little bit because religious freedom often entails bigotry, and I find if your religious freedom is imposing on the freedoms of others in that sense, then it's not religious freedom anymore. You have now left the jurisdiction of religious freedom. Right to information and participation. Parents have the legal right to inspect their child's educational records of the school, have them explained if necessary, request updates and corrections, and have their child's education records sent to another school in a timely manner if they wish to have their child transfer schools. 8 states have laws that require schools to notify parents if their child is being bullied or is bullying other students, and 16 other states require schools to develop local policies. The Every Student Succeeds Act guarantees parent-teacher conferences, reasonable access to staff, opportunities to volunteer and participate and observe in their child's classrooms, the right to ask for qualifications of a child's teachers, and many other prerogatives. In many states like California, parents have the legal right to be notified if the school is conducting medical, cognitive, and language screenings of children. All parents have the right to participate in parent councils and committees and the right to join the school's parent-teacher association or organization. Parents can also appeal to their school's district board, which has regular meetings. So as a teacher, right, you are operating on an intimate level with these children. And if these children tell you information that you feel could get them harassed or hurt in their home, it is not only your right, but your responsibility to withhold that information from them. If a child comes to that teacher and says, I think I'm gay, but I can't tell my parents because they always talk about how the F slurs are horrible people and they're, abominations of God, then yeah, I mean, the teacher's not obligated to tell your parents that, because that could very well lead to actual harm coming to that child. Now, some might argue, okay, well, why doesn't the teacher go to the state authorities about it, right? Well, depending on which state you're in, that's not going to work, especially because the foster system and, having that child removed from the home is not always the best option for that child. Just because they're in an abusive environment doesn't mean it's going to be better for them if they're removed. Okay, that's not how that works. So teachers are really left in this weird in-between stage of the law where it's like they want to do what's best by this child to the most reasonable extent possible, while also not getting authorities involved if they do not honestly believe that authorities are going to be very helpful, especially if you're in a state like Missouri or Florida. Like it's very tricky. Parents have the legal rights to suck on my fat cock and balls. That's right, baby. Right to learn about evolution, not creationism. Righties hate that one. Rights to opt your children out from sexual health education and HIV and AIDS prevention education. I don't like this one. Some parents don't want school officials teaching sex information to their children. Students can opt out of these presentations if their parents request an exemption in writing or petition the principal. I don't like this. Children have the right to learn about sexual education. I'm sorry. They have that right. And if parents don't like it, well, go to a private school. I think those were the big ones that I wanted to go over. What the law says about parents' rights over schooling. It's the rallying cry heard in supermajority controlled state houses, contentious school board meetings in the run-up to Virginia's recent election of a Republican governor. Parental freedom, a freedom that credulous, grievance-fueled parents claim they can exert in schools over the curriculum, the books in the library, even health measures during a deadly pandemic. It is a ruse. In our constitutional order, our children's freedoms take priority over parental freedoms. I agree with that 1000%. This is such a good article. Given the overriding importance of schooling to democracy, our laws elevate and protect the rights of all children to learn and to grow as citizens. That perspective has been lost amid the sound and fury of the education culture war over parental rights. Politicians and activists instead play to the fear that demands for equality and an honest reckoning of our nation's past threaten parental freedom. We've heard that before. Now, where have we heard that? Remember that the demand for equal educational opportunities crystallized in the U.S. Supreme Court's Brown versus Board of Education decision, which then sparked opponents' cries for parental freedom. Many saw then and see now that parental freedom meant the freedom to preserve a racist structure of schooling. This is exactly the same thing that we're seeing now when parents want to opt their children out of education about gay people existing, trans people existing, etc. Which, by the way, isn't really taking place that much on a broad scale. It's literally just gay people exist, trans people exist, you might be gay or trans if this and this and this and that. And that's fine, and we love you and accept you, and there's nothing wrong with teaching children that. Not a single thing, and I will die on that hill. You should be allowed to opt your kids out of anti-drug education. Oh, true. Get them out of that DARE class. Anti-drug education in the United States just made me do more drugs. Nice. I mean, they literally are like, this is how crack's made, kids, and this is why you shouldn't do it. Don't do this. Do not snort crack. By the way, you take crack by snorting it, but don't do that. I mean, at a certain age, I guess it's appropriate to teach, like, I would say high school probably. you can start to teach the drug shit, but like, I don't know. That's I'm not going to unpack all of that right now. Segregation indeed remains our most disgraceful yet enduring sacrifice on the altar of parental freedom. Time and again, the Supreme Court has revered the residential and private school choices of parents, even as they have exacerbated segregation and widened school funding disparities, leaving far too many of our schools separate and unequal, essentially upending Brown's declaration that both segregation and unequal education opportunities subvert the equal protection of the laws. For all its lore, Brown was not the first landmark decision to outlaw school segregation. That honor goes to Clark versus Board of Directors. Somewhere along the way, progressives forgot about education as freedom for all children and allowed conservatives to own the term freedom. Now, all the oxygen in the room is consumed by a negative conception of parental freedom, a freedom from something, from public schools, health mandates, anti-racism curriculum. Fear and uncertainty abundant in these times drive us to such isolating, individualized forms of freedom. Yet unbounded, parental freedom serves only to stratify students, divide communities, and undercut the mission of public schools. And perhaps dismantling public education is ultimately the point. Experience has indeed shown that school choice practices that prioritize or cater to parental freedoms perpetuate segregation along the lines of race and ethnicity, disability, class, and other intersecting disadvantages. Refusing to sing these discordant hymns of liberty, we must reclaim and advance a positive vision of educational freedom to be an equal among equals. For children, that demands not merely a future tense freedom to become an equal someday, but a present tense freedom to learn how to treat each other as equals today. Such freedoms to become and to learn can be cultivated in schools that bring together children of different backgrounds and are designed to serve the common good. Fortunately, state constitutional law largely embraces educational freedoms to become and to learn, either explicitly in their educational clauses or in precedents like Clark, applying those clauses in ways that orient school children's freedoms toward democratic equality. Parents, of course, retain the privilege under the U.S. Constitution to decide whether their children will receive a public or private education, and in a more general sense, control their children's education, but that control has always been subject to reasonable state regulation and must yield to state compelling interests in a democratically educated citizenry. Basically, what this article is saying is that the right that a child has to their own education supersedes the right of a parent to control said education. If there is factual evidence out there that a child is seeking to learn, a parent cannot come in the way of that. I believe it's already written that your child has the right to an education about evolution. Now, why is it that we don't have the same right for sexual education? Why? Why are we allowed to pull children out of that? I strongly disagree with that. Children often know that they are gay, even if they don't have the words to say it. They often know that they're trans, even if they don't have the words to say it. These are things that happen as young as, I've seen personally, people talk about how, when they're as young as 5 years old, knowing that they're gay. As young as 5 years old or 6 years old, knowing that they're trans. Knowing inherently that you just identify with the other gender, or that you like boys if you're a boy. But they deserve to know this. This is their right to know this, so that they can grow up understanding that they're not some weird abomination of God like the conservatives want us to teach them, okay? Because that's what they want. This is not that far removed from all the trans panic going on right now is not that far removed from the gay panic. It's exactly the same thing. They're calling us child predators. They're calling us child groomers, especially teachers. I'm so worried about teachers' safety, and we're going to get to that in just a second here. But first, a look inside the textbooks that Florida rejected. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because I want to explain to you guys how conservatives are trying to overtake the educational system. That's part of this whole shebang, right? This is not about parents' rights, okay? This is about taking over the educational system. And we're going to look at the consequences of that soon. A look inside the textbooks that Florida rejected. The state rejected dozens of math textbooks. The New York Times reviewed 21 of them to figure out why. And you can see one of the pictures here. We're not going to read the whole article. I just want to go over a few of the pictures that caused representatives to take these books out of circulation. So let's take a look. Andy says that he can find 9 plus 5 by starting with 9 plus 1 equals 10. What do you think about Andy's way? Show your work and explain. To learn together, disagree respectfully. A page from the textbook Envision Florida Best Mathematics Grade 1 from the publisher Savas Learning Company. It tells students to disagree respectfully. Apparently, some people took issue with this. Why? I just don't understand the issue. They're learning different ways to add things together. Everyone kind of has a different way of doing it in their head. Now, me personally, when I was little, I thought the easiest way was doing 9 plus 1 first, right? Take away the 1 from the 5. Now you have 10 plus 4, and that's way easier. Personally, for me, that's a way easier way to do it. It may not be for Johnny over there, right? Okay, that's fine. We can discuss that. We can learn from each other, right? Maybe we'll learn something that we didn't know. The department said some of the books contain prohibited topics from social emotional learning or critical race theory, but it has released only 4 specific textbook pages showing content to which it objects. Using online sample materials provided by publishers to Florida school districts, the New York Times was able to review 21 of the rejected books and see what may have led to the state rejecting them. Because Florida has released so few details about its textbook review process, it is unknown whether these examples led to the rejections, but they do illustrate the way in which these concepts appear and don't appear in curriculum materials. In most of the books, there was little that touched on race, never mind an academic framework like critical race theory. But many of the textbooks included social emotional learning content of practice with roots in psychological research that tries to help students develop mindsets that can support academic success. Okay? So just because it is not directly related to math, right? Social emotional learning. That is a scientifically supported method, a underlying foundation for children to learn off of. You can't learn math if you don't have the tools to do so. Here's another image they took issue with from the textbook. Support for a social and emotional learning. This diagram names core skills. Yeah, so this isn't from a textbook. It's from Big Ideas Learning. Noon is afraid of heights. He doesn't want to cross a hanging bridge in the Belize jungle. His friends give him the self-confidence he needs to successfully walk across the bridge. I mean, I think that's fine. Soothing math anxiety. Many other rejected textbooks do prompt students to consider their emotions. In a McGraw-Hill fifth grade book shown below, students are encouraged at the beginning of the school year to write a math biography, reflecting on their feelings about the subject and how they expect math skills could help them enjoy hobbies or achieve goals. I think that's great. If you don't have the emotional motivation to learn math, you're not going to learn it. You should know why you need the math, right? That's going to give you the motivation to learn it. Here's another one. Divide decimals by whole numbers. Be curious. Which doesn't belong? A page teaching division asked the students the question, how can you understand your feelings? Like, it's a little bit out of place. I'll be honest. It's a little bit out of place to me, but I don't see the issue. Giving students a growth mindset. They're insane. And they pulled books off the shelves for this, like textbooks. Entire textbooks were written for children, and they pulled them because they have statements like this. Or they show a white kid with a black kid. It's insanity. But that's how they do it. That's how this starts. They are going to start honing in on our children because that's how fascism takes root. All right? Make no mistake, this is a fascist attitude that they are adopting right now with the way that they're treating our education system. I want to talk about the safety of teachers in schools for just a minute, okay? Let's take a look at what was going on last year during the whole mask shebang.
County Unified School District families received this letter today. Reading, a parent took it upon himself to verbally assault a principal. That led to a serious physical altercation between him and a teacher as the teacher intended to protect the principal. Superintendent Tori Gibson said the attack happened yesterday when the parent's daughter walked out of a school building wearing a mask.
It was physical. The teacher was bleeding, had some lacerations to his face, had some bruising on his face, pretty good sized knot on the back of his head.
This happened nearly an hour after school let out, so luckily very few students were on campus at the time.
Things have been slowly and steadily ramping up. And so as much as I would like to say I'm surprised, there's a part of me that internally is not completely surprised that this has happened.
She says the male...
We already have precedent for parents going to attack teachers. This happened last year. Parents attack teachers because people like Tucker Carlson were telling them, your teachers are abusing your children by making them wear masks. It's literal child abuse. They're abusing your children. They do this all the time. They hide behind children, okay? They use them as little body shields. Is what they do. And then they legislate around that. They justify actions such as this around that.
Parent was frustrated with the school's indoor mask requirement for everyone while students are on campus. But the district's policy says teachers who have proved they are fully vaccinated can take off their mask indoors when students are not present. The district's policy is in line with the indoor mask mandate by the state health department.
My understanding is
even if the teachers don't agree with the masking policy, they are literally just following the letter of the law. They have to do that. They have to. If they don't, they lose their job because they're breaking the fucking law. Even if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt and the most, you want to be as forgiving as possible against these dumbass anti-maskers. You're directing your anger incorrectly toward the teachers and the schooling staff. All right, they have to do that. So not only are you wrong, but you're also stupid. So that's enough on that. You guys get the idea. Let's look at another one. Woman accused of assaulting teacher during parent-teacher conference. This happened in just March of this year. Teacher defends comment made to mother prior to alleged assault. A 34-year-old woman was arrested after police said she assaulted a Miami-Dade public school teacher during a parent-teacher conference. The incident allegedly occurred on February 14th at Palmetto Middle School in Pinecrest. According to Miami-Dade Schools Police, the meeting was called because Stephanie Armis's child was continuing to have issues with her students. Police said the school principal was present for the meeting along with an assistant principal and Mayade Ursoff, the child's social studies teacher. According to a report obtained by Local 10 News, Ursoff told Armas, "You need to learn how to raise your child." Little bit of a stringent comment. Police said Ursoff's comment did not sit well with Armas, and she stood up and struck the teacher on the shoulder. So the response to this teacher's rude comment was not to go and talk to their supervisor and, make sure that the teacher does not make rude comments like that. The response was to assault this teacher. The mother's also accused of throwing a picture frame at the teacher and spitting on the principal's desk. Very normal and cool response. She slapped my left arm, Ursoff said. She then spit at me, toward me. Luckily, I had my mask on. And then she picked up a metal picture frame from the principal's desk. It had glass, and she hurled it at me. Armas turned herself into police the following day. She now faces a battery charge. Good. The teacher spoke to Local 10 News reporter Roy Ramos Thursday, and she said she doesn't believe her comment to Armas was inappropriate. No, because teachers are human beings, and especially in the situation with COVID, with everything that we've gone through, the disrespect by a lot of students and some of the parents is just out of control. Parents who are picking up their children from school Thursday reacted to the arrest. I definitely don't think physical violence is ever going to solve anything, but we are very protective of our children. Yeah, big butt there. I don't care. Those teachers are not attacking your children. They don't deserve that shit, even if they made a rude comment. I'm sorry. It was a rude comment. That's it. Maybe she fucking deserved it, okay? I'm serious. Like, maybe she deserved to be told that. Because I got news for you. Sometimes you're just a bad fucking parent. You ever thought of that? Sometimes you're just a bad parent. Violence, threats, and harassment are taking a toll on teachers. This is the statistics portion of this. 1/3 of teachers experienced at least one incident of verbal harassment or threat of violence from students during their first full pandemic school year, and 14% were physically attacked, a new survey finds. 14% of teachers. Now, that's not by parents, mind you. That's by everybody combined. Teachers and other educators also reported receiving verbal threats from parents, colleagues, and administrators over the course of the 20 to 21 school year, according to the study done by a task force of the American Psychological Association. The researchers surveyed a national sample of almost 15,000 teachers, administrators, blah, blah, blah. The violence and harassment has taken a toll. The survey found 43%. Let that sink in. 43% said that they want to quit, a finding that echoes other surveys conducted during the pandemic. Violence against teachers isn't new. Nearly 6% of teachers report being physically attacked by a student. About 10% said they were threatened with injury in the 2015 to 16 school year, according to the most recent federal data available. While that data isn't directly comparable to the APA survey, educators have said anecdotally that student misbehavior has worsened during the pandemic and violence in schools seems to be increasing, perhaps because of the trauma students have experienced. This is mostly an article on students assaulting teachers, but it did have that one little segment about parents sending threats to teachers. I think this is the big takeaway right here. Parents are just blaming teachers for all the shit that's going wrong when it's not their fault at all, all right? Last year, I was quoted an article in the school library journal about how I discussed toxic masculinity with my high school students when we read Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet together. Within days, far-right publications twisted my words to denounce, quote, woke liberal indoctrination in schools. How in the fuck are the teachers not culpable? Sometimes they are, but it's the broader school system. These teachers are under constant scrutiny by superintendents and shit. People act like teachers are just like indoctrinating kids willy-nilly, just teaching them whatever shit that they want to teach them. That's not true. They have very strict guidelines to go by. In some ways, I feel like it's a little too strict. Strangers sent me messages on social media accusing me of indoctrinating students, of being unprofessional and intelligent. I received a handwritten letter addressed to me at school. The letter accused me of being a low-life, pseudo-intellectual, swallow-the-lib/woke/ BS kind Kool-Aid. The hyphens were added to replace letters because of Washington Post style and not in the original. The authors decried my commitment to a more modern, inclusive curriculum as filth idiocy, non-intelligent crap. They included an annotated copy of Cardi B's WAP, suggesting I teach it to my students in the spirit of modern, diverse, and inclusive voices. They went on to disparage black artists and the black community. Now, isn't that interesting? So throw in a little bit of racism while you're at it. Yeah, they label educators as pedophiles, fascists, and child abusers. When I see this happening, the only conclusion that I can draw from this is that they are going to start attacking teachers. Look out for it. The next school shooting is probably going to be a deranged parent. The coaches indoctrinating them? Are they not beholden to the rules? Nobody's indoctrinating them, you fucking moron! Besides their dumbass conservative parents. Jesus Christ, imagine living in a country where children grow up being told that an all-loving, all-knowing God is watching them constantly watching you, making sure that you're not stealing things, making sure that you're not touching yourself, making sure that you're getting on your knees and praying to them every fucking day and night and Sunday for 2 hours at a stuffy little building that you don't even want to be in. You just want to go home and fucking play video games or some shit. Imagine being told that. And that if you don't follow all those things, the all-loving God is going to send you to eternal hellfire from which you will never escape because you didn't praise him enough. Because you masturbated, right? Because you're gay. Yeah, that's what we're teaching our kids. And yet the teachers are somehow the ones indoctrinated them. F that and f you, all right? So that's probably why I'm going to get a gun to protect myself. I mean, honestly, at this point, what else can you do? So, I mean, if you want to talk about indoctrination, that's what religion has to do with this, buddy. Religion is by and far the more indoctrinating element here. Let's talk about actual parents' rights. Things that I believe parents have a right to. Things that I believe are real rights. Let's talk about the average childbirth cost and how to pay with health insurance, right? The average cost of childbirth is $13,024 for a vaginal delivery. $13,000, my friends. But don't worry. With a silver health insurance plan, it can go down to $6,940. What a steal. That's amazing. Oh, and let's not forget the C-section, much more expensive, costing an average of $22,646, including standard pre-delivery and post-delivery expenses. You got the premium package there with the C-section, didn't you? The cost to deliver a baby totaling more than $10,000 is based on what the hospital charges. If you have health insurance, how much you pay for childbirth will be determined by the plan's benefits. This includes insurance plans deductibles and co-payments, which can affect how much you'd pay for the doctor's services in the hospital room. Nearly 99% of births in the U.S. take place in hospitals, making childbirth the most common reason for hospitalization. If you give birth in a hospital, you'll spend at least one night there or more if you've had a C-section, and you'll typically need the services of nurses, anesthesiologists, and obstetricians or midwives. You may have procedures like fetal monitoring and postnatal care for you and the newborn. The costs for all these elements of a hospital birth add up. Here's a breakdown of how the cost of a routine delivery in a hospital may look as per a sample insurance plan on healthcare.gov. So they charge $2,700 for the mother's hospital charges, $21 for the routine obstetric care, $900 for baby hospital charges, $900 for anesthesia, $500 for lab tests, $200 for prescriptions, $200 for radiology, $40 for the vaccines and preventative medicine, totaling up to a whopping $7,500. So yeah, the party of family values is not doing a whole lot for this. The party of parental rights is not doing a whole lot for this. Let's talk about parents' rights, shall we? Let's move on to how much it costs to raise a fucking child. Ever wonder how much it costs? Expenses such as food and clothing start to add up the moment a baby is born. Learn how much you can expect to spend during the first year of your child's life. Here's a list of monthly child expenses. Admit it. Babies are cute, but they come with a big price tag. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture report, the average middle-income family spends between $12,000 and $14,000. $12,000 and $14,000 on a child-related expenses each year. For newborns, the cost is higher. Some studies show numbers ranging from $20,000 to $50,000 for the child's first year of life, depending on location and household income. Beyond the general items like a stroller, crib, car seat, here's some estimates of what you can expect to shell out in your baby's first year. Month 1. The numbers can vary depending on where you live, what kind of birth you have, and your insurance policy. While birthing costs in some states can exceed $27,000, the average cost is usually only around $10,000. Oh, good. Oh, that's so good. Oh, that's so good. Thank you. Good. Months 2 and 3. Feeding and daily care expenses. Figuring out a sleep routine is the biggest challenge here. The good news is that babies usually don't require much beyond breast milk or formula and diapers at this point. If you're breastfeeding, your costs will be lower, aside from the one-time expense of a pump, which can cost anywhere from $40 to $185. While powdered formula will run you between $70 and $150 per month. At about $60 for bottles, $75 for the monthly diapers and wipes you'll go through. Vaccinations your baby should get, and a couple of visits to the doctor during these months. Estimated monthly amount, $300. Month 4, monthly childcare expenses. The average weekly childcare cost for one infant is $565 for a nanny, which this, of course, includes if you can afford one. $215 for daycare or childcare center, which again, if you can afford one. clothes, safety shit. Baby-proofing costs anywhere from $100 to $1,000, depending on the size and layout of your home. School babysitters, which again, if you can afford them, and that's not including life insurance if you want to get that on your kid. So let's talk about parents' rights for a minute. Let's talk about parents' rights, right? How about the parents' right to feed their fucking kids? How about the parents' right to have clothes for their kids? To have a roof over their head for their kids? Basic shit. Let's talk about parents' rights. These motherfucking ghouls do not care about parents' rights. Not by a long shot. They care about their fucked up agenda. That's what they care about. I'm so over it. To round this all out for you folks, I have a nice little clip. In Nazi Germany, the fascists tried to take over the educational system, and they did successfully. And it's not a one-to-one comparison of what's happening now, but this is how the fascist route takes hold. This is one crucial element of it. This is one crucial element of how fascism takes hold in a nation.
Education was used to shape the nation and what the Nazis called the national community. So it was about fostering a sense of creation and belonging to the nation. And this took the form of all kinds of different changes to the curriculum and to school textbooks.
The National Socialist idea of the national community was in fact an exclusive club meant only for strong, healthy Aryans. Educational content produced by the Nazis provided a framework for justifying this. Textbooks began to incorporate anti-Semitism disguised as objective biological or anthropological fact.
Now, what was that about getting rid of critical race theory in textbooks again? I seem to recall that.
One of them was called the poisonous mushroom. And again, it was just about...
It's not where fascism started. Obviously, it's a crucial element, though.
Trying to show a whole gamut of allegations. So the Jew as a communist, the Jew as a financier.
Recall one very popular book by a Mr. Matt Walsh involving a boy named Johnny who wanted to become a walrus. Sounds familiar, right?
Classrooms became an important frontier for perpetuating Nazi ideology, disguised as education.
And by the way, they also love to hide behind the guise of science when it's convenient for them. Because recall, right? Every single medical institution in the country that has any degree of credibility believes that trans people are valid in their gender identity and supports medical intervention for it. Okay? And social transition. But these motherfucking dumbasses, these dipshits, these brain-dead baboons are going to use science to try and justify their transphobic beliefs. List them? I'd be more than happy to. I'm so glad you asked. I am so glad you asked. Look at this is from the Working for Transgender Equal Rights page. And these are all institutions. All medical institutions that have statements about trans rights and about trans treatment and why it's important. So there you go. There's your fucking list.
The way that German was taught was also important too, so that there was a focus in education, in German lessons, not just on the language, but on the literature as well, and on folk tales and German myths and legends, as well as on components of the blood and soil ideology that meant that people were bound up to the nation and to the land.
Kind of sounds like American exceptionalism and the what was it called? The right to like expand the borders in early America. Divine something. I can't remember what it's called.
Germany's youth were considered incredibly important to the National Socialist movement. Their exposure to Nazi propaganda took place in and out of the classroom.
The Nazis had a concept of total education, and this meant a combination of formal education in the school system, complemented by informal socialization, we could say.
Yeah, they still teach
Membership
that.
in the Hitler Youth grew from around 100,000 members in 1932 to over 7 million in 1939. Groups like Hitler Youth and the League of German Girls indoctrinated children through exposure to Nazi publications and participation in Nazi party rallies, summer camps, and almost militarized games.
It was the idea of each German girl or boy playing their part in the nation, almost as building blocks to create an organic whole. And this organic whole would be the foundation of the future. So the youth were absolutely essential to everything that the Nazis did.
Make sure the kids say that pledge.
In late 1933.
You guys get the idea. As I said, that's not going to be a direct one-to-one comparison, and obviously Nazi Germany was horrible. But this is how fascism happens. Do you honestly think that just all crashed down on them suddenly? No. They insidiously inject this over time. That's how that happens. By taking over education and indoctrinating our children, the conservatives are trying to implement their fascist policies, because education is a very, very important battleground for these people. Very important. You have to indoctrinate these kids. You have to make sure that these kids support your values and internalize them and proliferate, right? So where does this leave us? Conservatives do not want parents' rights. And when I say conservatives, I mean establishment conservatives. They do not want parents' rights. Understand that. That's not what they care about. If they cared about that, they would do way more to ensure that parents have the basic necessities to take care of their children. Basic. And I'm talking about food and clothes. They don't care about parents' rights. They care about control. These conservative parents want to own their children like fucking property. And I was saving that for the end, but Glenn Beck already spoiled that for me. All right, he gave away the ending. They said it. Your most prized possession. That's how they view children, as their possessions. That's why they get so uppity when they feel like schools are teaching children these radical ideas, when all it is education. You're telling children that gay people exist. I want to stress this again. I have a partner who is bisexual and non-binary, and I fear deeply in my gut that that is going to affect her career, because we're in Ohio. So when a kid comes up to her, She's a teacher. I don't know if I mentioned that. She's a teacher. So when a kid comes up to her and says, I think I might be gay, but I don't know if my parents will accept that. If we have a bill stating that she is required to go and tell a parent about it, she has one of two options. One, she can keep it to herself and protect the child and risk her entire career. The other one is she follows the letter of the law, tells the parents, and then that child is abused. It's a very precarious situation we're putting our teachers in, one that they don't deserve. That's why on Monday I'm going to the school board. I'm going to start going to these school board meetings, and I'll record them too. I'll have proof. And I'm going to start telling them, we need to oppose this House bill. We have to oppose this House bill. We have to oppose anti-LGBTQ legislation, and we have to allow our children to know that they are not abominations. If they're gay, or if they're trans, or if they're bisexual or asexual, doesn't matter. Non-binary, doesn't matter. They have to know that they're loved, that they have people who are going to protect them, and that the schools where we send them every day for half of their fucking waking hours are going to be safe, are going to be places where they can be themselves. I cannot stress this enough, how important that is. The school boards are going to be hearing a lot from me in the coming weeks. You know, I am out of school for the summer. I'm going to have more time, and I'm going to make sure they know this shit.